An unexpected personage whose arrival was a mystery and remains a riddle aroused a certain element of surprise in an existence whose very evenness of tenor was becoming a punishment. He was a Pole, calling himself Charles Frederic Jules Pinkowski and claiming rank in the Saxon army. He had gone to the Isle of Elba, enlisted as an ordinary officer in the Napoleon battalion, whence he became a light horseman in the Polish squadron. Having accompanied the Emperor to France, he had been appointed lieutenant on April 12th in the 7th Regiment, later to be transferred to the 2nd Lancers, with whom he had possibly seen the Belgian campaigns. Then, without anyone knowing quite how, he managed to find his way into Malmaison and succeeded in being included in the list of those to accompany the Emperor. He had traveled with Madame Bertrand and her children from Malmaison to Rochefort, embarked on the Medusa at the same time as the Emperor, went on board the Salle and was on the Myrmidon when the Emperor was on the Bellerophon. At Plymouth, he was allowed to take farewell of the Emperor together with the officers of his rank who were not allowed to accompany him. With them, he returned to the Eurotas, upon which they were detained. But while they had been deported to Malta, he alone, this unknown Pole, had been taken aboard the St. George, on which he had awaited the departure of a merchant vessel for St. Helena. On board St. George, he married a girl, Melanie Dupont, a former pupil of the Conservatoire at Paris, who had come to join him in England, where she had many friends. He left soon after and arrived at Jamestown on December 29th, 1815, and the admiral, thinking he was doing the Emperor's service, conducted him the long one. For this occasion, Pinkowski wore blue, silver-braided uniform of orderly officers, and since orderlies bore the rank of captain, so he too was promoted to that rank. At first, the Emperor did not want to receive him. He neither knew who he was nor whence he came, and he was indignant at this assumption of uniform. But it was absurd to the Emperor that perhaps this Pinkowski brought some news, and that he came from France. Without officially vouching for him, Bertrand swore that he had seen him on Elba. He was accordingly introduced and became tolerated, if not actually welcome. He was put in charge of the stables under Gourgaud, and he hunted and sometimes killed partridges. He went in search of news of Jamestown, and when he could not learn any, he invented some. For this man was not a liar, he was the liar. The whole existence was based on a foundation of colossal falsehoods. Of these, some could be explained by the fact that they were profitable to him, some were so futile that they betrayed a certain madness, but none of them were dangerous. He knew, therefore, how to look after himself. He was made to take his meals alone, but afterwards, upon his request, was allowed to eat with the doctor and orderly officer, and he was satisfied, for he spoke English fluently. No one knew why he came. No one knew afterwards why he left. The English, without any intimated desire on the part of the Emperor, had allowed him to go to St. Helena and reside there. Nevertheless, they withdrew this permission and drove him out. Moreover, the 9 months he had spent about Napoleon proved particularly profitable to him, for he lived on them for the rest of his life. He was respected and allotted a pension for his courageous devotion. Flattering biographies immortalized him, and then there were funeral panegyrics in which all his virtues, even his sincerity, were extolled. And with wonderful dexterity, he thus insinuated himself into the margin of history. That concludes the mysterious interlude in which it appears the Emperor and his companions did not take the interest it deserved. But as events were to become serious, it is not to be wondered that it was neglected. Hudson Lowe appears in the scene. What had taken place up to that moment was only the prologue. Now the drama really begins. By some strange illusion, based upon an article which had appeared in the Morning Chronicle disapproving of the severity of his captivity, the Emperor had flattered himself that the new governor would arrive with more open-hearted instructions. So he awaited his arrival with impatience, and at the approach of every vessel, inquired if he had come at last on April 14th, Easter Sunday. He was just going out in his carriage with the ladies when the news was brought to him that the frigate Phaeton, with the new governor, and his suite on board was in view. He so took his walk that he might see the frigate anchor in the Jamestown roads. From the next day onwards, it was evident what might be expected from Hudson Lowe's attitude. Through an orderly officer, he announced that at 9 o'clock on the 16th, he would present himself to see General Bonaparte. The Emperor did not receive him at that hour. Further, Sir George Cockburn had to admit that anyone desiring to be received by him and this applied to the Admiral also should arrange with the Grand Marshal. It was not an audience which the governor craved. He forced upon them his visit. His regulation inspection. Punctually at 9 o'clock, accompanied by his staff, he arrived at Longwood at a gallop and dismounted in front of the house. Masson showed him into the parlor where Gorgo joined him. Saint-Denis, who was on duty, replied to his request to see the general that the emperor was unwell and had not yet risen. Lowe went around the residence, saw the orderly officer, and instructed him to go and request that he might be received. Answer came, "The emperor's asleep and no one can see him." He then made up his mind to find Bertrand, to beg him to announce his arrival to General Bonaparte and to request him to receive him. Then on the following day at 2 o'clock, Sir Hudson Lowe, at the head of his staff, arrived punctually with Admiral Cockburn, who intended to present his successor to the emperor. They were shown into the parlor by these gentlemen, as they called Les Cases Gorgo and Montallon. Bertrand had to conduct visitors to the emperor and was with him in the drawing room. He gave instructions that the governor should enter. Novaris was on the door. His orders were that no one should enter except the person or persons specifically named, so that after Lowe had gone in and the admiral tried to follow him, Novaris barred the way with his arm and shut the door in his face. The admiral, taken aback and humiliated, did not further insist upon admission. However, Lowe approached the emperor, talking to him in French. "I come, monsieur, to pay my respects." The emperor immediately continued in Italian upon the Corsicans and the Abercrombie expedition to Egypt in a not very serious strain. Then they came to business. Before taking leave, Lowe introduced his staff. The admiral never entered and left extremely exasperated. The emperor for the moment was delighted and said he would not have missed that day for 1,000,000 francs, but upon reflection he decided to express his regret to the admiral through O'Meara and sent Montallon to the latter to convey his apologies. But the blow had fallen. Hudson Lowe knew what to expect, but he arrived with instructions which, if they were substantially like those given to Sir George Cockburn, and which he had to regard as the general principles regulating his conduct, aggravated them upon certain points, above all by giving him discretionary powers. "You will observe," they said, "that it is the desire of His Majesty's government to grant General Bonaparte all the indulgence compatible with the security of his person, that he shall by no means escape nor hold communication with anyone except through you, must be your continual care, and with assured satisfaction upon these 2 points, all means and all recreations which tend to reconcile Bonaparte to his captivity must be allowed." Was that not sufficient to arouse all kind of anxiety in a man easily alarmed and over-conscientious, and induce him to enforce all possible restrictions?